Okay, so we're just going to go through what we ended off yesterday regarding the halachas of is it better for a woman to go to a shul to hear the Megillah laning or no? That it would be better for a woman to in fact go hear the laning, the Megillah reading in a house. So the Sefer Ashrei Ish, this is all quoted yesterday that we learned. Ashrei Ish, this is in Chelek Gimel and page Reish Sadi Beis. So he says over here, this is from Rav Eliashiv, Dasha ben Noshim lo yinemer hadin shel berov am. That this is a surprise, a halachic surprise, a chiddush. That by women we don't say the halacha that berov am hadras melech, that it's better for them to be in a large group setting. We don't say that, which is a tremendous insight and chiddush. B'machmas eis asiba ma'adifa l'shmoya es hakriya bebayis rashois lechatchila la'asois kain. And if for whatever reason it is, it's better for her to hear the laning in the house, then it's permitted for her to do this. Even lechatchila, she could hear the laning in the house. Even preferably, she could hear the laning in the house. So this is a tremendous insight when it comes to the halachas of a Megillah. That what? That we don't say that this halacha of presuming Nisim Berova Hadras Melech actually applies to women. It would not. Tremendous exception and chiddush according to this understanding. We're going to see others are going to argue on this ruling. He quotes over here the source of this is in the sefer called Halichos ve'anhagos. So I looked up that sefer as well, and now we're going to see it inside. This is the Halichos ve'anhagos, a very short sefer on Purim, and he says over here, and by the way, it's a misquote on the page because this is page 13, and the Ashrei Ish. Wait a second. No, page 13. Okay, never mind. No, it was a right quote. Okay, so I thought that this was 12. No, mistake on my part. No. Okay, so it is the right page. Okay, so the Halichos Van Hagos, he brings down here and he says like this. That by women we don't say this halacha of berovam hadras melech, and therefore they would not need to hear the Megillah reading in a large crowd. V'machmas is a sibo ma'adifu l'shmoya esakriya b'bayis rashois l'chatchila la'asois kain. And if because of a certain reason it's better for her to hear the laning in the house, she's permitted to do so. She could hear the laning in the house, the Megillah reading in the house. So this is the ruling of Rav Eliashiv, who holds that by women we don't say this halacha of that they need to hear the laning in a large group setting or in a shul per se. Rabbi Yaakov Breish in the Shul Shubas Chelkas Yaakov Seminary Shlamet Beis has more length about this. In the Shaila, in his question, he says that who is it better to go to the base measures, to go to shul to hear the laning in the seaboard? Is it better for the mother to go, or one of the mother's children at the age of 11? The difference would be that someone needs to stay home to watch the younger children. So they need to stay home. So who's going to be the one who's going to stay home? Who's going to be able to go to the initial Megillah reading in shul, which will have rovam, a lot of people over there? So he begins by saying logic would dictate that the woman should go first because the katan, the young kid, is only going to be obligated because of chinuch, because of education, and therefore it's trei d'Rabbanan, it's two d'Rabbanans over here, and therefore by the woman it's only one d'Rabbanan. So that's the idea over here. So logic would dictate that what? That the kid is only obligated because of chinuch. So number one, his obligation is only rabbinic to begin with. It's only d'Rabbanan. Number two, he's only obligated because to educate him, but he's not really obligated at the same level as an adult. But by a woman, it's only one d'Rabbanan. She's obligated. The whole thing is d'Rabbanan. The whole thing is rabbinic to begin with. So logic would dictate that the woman would be the person who would go to the first laning because she is more important, because she's obligated more. It's only one d'Rabbanan.
More important than whom?
Than the katan, than the kid, who it's two d'Rabbanans. So the shoyel, the person who asked the shaila, wanted to say that the katan would actually be better. However, he says, Sarachin, you need to look into this more. That is it better for a woman to hear the laning with a large group in the actual shul, in a base medrash? Is that really better than hearing it in the house? And this whole OC goes and he really discusses benching more. We don't need to go into it because we have a lot to do in a little bit of time. But you should know, I read it, I looked at it. And at the end, this is where he says, it's towards the end, he starts going into, look, when it comes to Nashim, Kol Kavoida Bas Melech Penima, that the honor of a woman is inside, to be modest, not to go out in public places and the like. And the whole discussion nowadays has changed now that women go out to work more, they're out and about more, but there's still an idea of a modesty, of being modest and not going out to places where there are a lot of men, not to, God forbid, cause the men to have improper thoughts. This is why the Mishnah Berurah says, we're going to get to this Shar Hatzion in our Siman Tov Reish Pei Tesif Cotton Tes Vav, that a woman cannot motzi other women. We're going to be learning about this more today as soon as we wrap up this first part over here, but we're going to be learning about this more as we continue in the Siman as well. Could a woman read the Megillah for another woman or women, and they would fulfill their obligation with that? And is there a difference if she already heard the Megillah reading? So the Shar Hatzion, the Chafetz Chaim down there in the Shar Hatzion says that no, she cannot fulfill the obligation of other women because it's Zila Bu Milsa, which in English translates to mean it's improper. It's not good to do.
You allow them to bench.
Yeah, the previous part he goes into benching and what would potentially be a difference between the two, and that's a major discussion in and of itself. What would be the difference, right? One difference is that the Megillah laning is in more of a public setting. Obviously, that's the obvious difference. But
No, I mean, when women are at the table, if they're usually as it's nashim, you can't even see them.
Right. Well, we're obviously not talking about that they are staying in the Ezra's Nashim, right? We're talking about that. We're talking just women. They're going to the main shul. They're going up on the bima, and it's just women, right? So that's much more of a public situation. All right, we're going to discuss that more. Like I said, upcoming in the Siman, but we're touching upon it right now. So the Shar Hatzion says, remember, because he's quoting a Shar Hatzion in a later sif that we didn't learn yet. Just pointing that out. We're going to learn it. Don't worry. So the Shar Hatzion says that no, that you see that what you see from the Shar Hatzion that one woman shouldn't fulfill the obligation of many other women. That it is not better for them to be in a public setting and to have a lot of people over there to hear the laning. Why? Kol kavod bas melech penima. Like we just said, that the honor of a woman is inside, not in a public setting like that. And even though v'after kama noshim dilon holchim lebeis hamedrash l'shmoya mikra Megillah, and even though that many women in our communities, they do in fact go to shul, they do go to the beis medrash to listen to laning. You can't come along and say that it's considered as if they made that an obligation upon themselves. You can't. That's the lights fine. Okay, you can't say that they made that an obligation upon themselves. Don't say that they made it as an obligation upon themselves. That now they obligated themselves to hear the laning, the reading of the Megillah similar to shofar, that they made the obligation upon themselves. There's a difference between the two. And that's a Siman Tov Kuf Pei Tes Shaila. Back over there in Hilchos Rosh Hashanah. Not Tov Reish Pei Tes Kuf Tes. Big difference, 100 simanim earlier. Okay? Maskana de Milsa Ein Shum Adifuso Lenoshim Leleilecha Beis HaMedrash Mikra Megillah. The bottom line conclusion, according to the Chelkas Yaakov, is that it is not halachically preferable to women to go to shul to hear the laning of Megillah. And that's what it seems like from the Mishnah Berurah as well. When he says, that what? That he says that in some places the custom is that women go to shul, to the women's section, to hear the laning, to hear the reading of Megillah, which implies that this was not the universal custom. It was only in certain places. And he says, you need to look into this. How is this possible that they could fulfill their obligation if they can't hear anything? And that, in fact, was what we already saw in the Prima God, and we saw in the Kafakayim in our Siman Sivkot and Gimel, who says that if you can, in fact, not hear anything in the women's section, you would not fulfill your obligation even after the fact, and you would need to hear again another reading of the Megillah. So this is the ruling of Rabbi Yaakov Breich, similar to the ruling of Rav Eliashiv. The Piskei Shmuos, which all of this we saw quoted yesterday in the Dershu and the Piskei Shmuos. By the way, this is just opening up shop, presenting all of the information in an organized fashion. He begins, this is the Piskei Chuvos in Ar Simon, in the Sefer on Purim and Dalid Parshios, and Simon Tov Reish Pei Tes on page Pei Dalid. He has a lot of pages on this Simon, and he says like this. He says, "Einon srichois lalechas lahad lishmo betzibur gam emnei kol kavod bas mechbim gam emnei shemar shel lebayim." According to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, they don't need to go for two reasons. Number one, because of the sneas reason, the modesty reason, like we just said. Number two is that she has obligation towards her husband.
The obligation.
Okay, obligations, maybe watching kids and doing other things and the like, and making sure everything's good in the house. And let's take a look at the footnote. But before we go to the footnote 52, take a look at the next tshuva. That's according to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. The next tshuva is according to Rav Chaim Kanievsky, who says, no, Tamid adif l'lechas l'saketz v'lo. No, for sure, it's better to go to the shul and not to go to the house. 100% it's better to go to shul, says Rav Chaim Kanievsky, arguing. She'll find time for that, just like she finds time for other things. So we have a fundamental machlokas. It should be pointed out that it seems like most say that the women should, in fact, go to shul. Let's take a look at the footnotes before we jump.
I think Rebbetzin Kanievsky, I think she daven with the minyan, eat three minyanim a day.
Could very well be. Take a look at the footnote. Mitvarav de Hagon Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach l'chayra yoitzi beis devarim. The question is also, when did she daven with the minyan 3 times a day? Not when she had kids, probably.
I think, not when she had kids. I don't know, but I'm not sure.
B'dvarav de Hagon Rosh Hashanah Zalman Auerbach l'chayra yoitzi beis devarim echad. The kol hadvarim amurim davko im yesh lo bebayis kriyas Megilah chaz einas vichal aseis mishum kol kavoido. We're talking about over here specifically in a house, right? Where there's the kriyas Megilah, right? Where there's the laning of the Megilah. So then you don't need to go because of kol kavoda. Right? We're talking about in a house where there's a Megilah. So you don't need to go because of kol kavoda. Aval im ein lo mi sheyikra bebayis v'hi maspekes ben minyan kotel na minyan gadol ula be'em esricha lechas la minyan gadol mishum sheim kvar yatzim beisa shetivchar kvar. Hold on, what's happening over here? What's happening over here is like this. We have 2 factors into play, okay? We're talking about when there's already a Megilah in the house, right? So now you don't need to leave the house. Now we could apply the pasuk of kol kavoda bas melech b'nima because there's already a Megilah in your house, and now she doesn't need to leave. However, if there's no one who is able to read the Megilah for her in the house, and now she's at doubt, should I go to a smaller minyan or a larger minyan? Should I go to a place where there are more people davening there or less people davening? So now, once you're already leaving the house, go to the place where there are more people. Because once you already left the house, right? Once you already left the house, just go to the place where there's more people. Also, that second reason that they have to take care of their husband's needs, that's only if she's married. However, if she's not married, that would not apply. Had it not been for that reason of what? That it's modest for a woman to be in the house, so then she would leave. Because you don't have that reason that she has to take care of her husband. So that's also something to think about.
Only by married.
That's the shot. Kol kvoda bas melech penimus dictates and teaches us that even if she's not married, it would still be better for her not to go out.
Not to go out.
Correct.
So
you're the laning.
According to that, so the smaller minyan should be preferable for kol kavoda bas melech penimus.
That's what he was saying. No, because once you're out, you're already out. Once you're out, you're already walking from your car to the women's section.
There's a big difference between like 10 people at a minyan and there's like hundreds of people there and you're in front of everybody. You know?
But you're not in front of them. You're in the women's section. But the problem is when you get there, when you leave. So you got to be in a modest way. Like I said, this is a big mitzvah for women to go walk around at off-peak times when there aren't men around. That's what it is. We're talking, by the way, for sure. Everyone's dressed modestly over here. It goes without saying, but they have to be cognizant of the fact and careful not to have the gatherings over there in places where there are men and to go in and chas v'shalom to cause an improper thought. That's why on Yom Kippur we lane the laning of the Parsha of Arayos, illicit relations, even Yom Kippur at the end of the holiest day of the year when everyone's tired. They say because a person even at that moment could have improper thoughts. All right. See the video on jealousy. How is it possible not to get jealous? 7 regions, Parshas Yisro on the Shmos playlist over there. The 40 minute year. Look around 33 minutes in where we discussed improper thoughts and how to control that. And that whole recording, whole video, we discussed that. It actually got a lot of views, that one.
It was yesterday. Rabbi Raza talked about hashish. People smoking weed possibly on
Oh, he did? I just put up a share on it.
He may have quoted Ramosh. I'm sure the recorder of Ramosh.
Oh yeah. You saw yesterday?
I didn't see it.
I just put something up.
Spoke about.
Yeah, I just yesterday. It got very few views, and in fact, it was blocked. They said that this is only for people over the age of 18. So as soon as I read that, 20 minutes after I put it up, I did a thing. You could apply for a thing to get it not blocked. Within 2 minutes, they unblocked it because they thought that maybe I was saying things that were inappropriate about weed and whatever. And then I guess they watched it. They watched the first 30 seconds. They said, "No, you're good." So it was unblocked. But that was the first time that ever happened in 150 different uploads. So that was interesting. So yeah.
You can talk about other things, but you can't talk about that.
No, you could talk about it, but they don't want random people going up and promoting things that could be harmful for other people. That's what they were worried about. So they still let it up, but they capped the age to 18. So that was very interesting, I thought. I'll call upon him. Let's take a look at the last tshuva on this topic, then we're going to move on in life over here. The Shailus and Tshuvas Mishnah Halachos. All right, this is Rabbi Menashe Klein. He has a tshuva on this topic as well. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but feel free on your own time to do so. This is in Chelek Dalet and Siman Pei Beis. He's dealing with our exact question. And he basically comes along and he says that no, that the woman certainly would be more obligated to hear the Megillah reading in the shul than her younger child. And therefore, it's obvious that it is better for her to go to hear the laning, and the child should in fact remain in the house. So this is the psak of the Mishnah Halachos, and this is basically the bottom line. So bottom line, to summarize everything that we just did in 45 seconds, all right, is that there are definitely major shitas who hold that it's better for women to hear the Megillah reading in the house itself. Definitely 100% illegitimate. However, it seems like most say to go to shul, but even so, when you go to the shul, you got to do it in a sanua way, not in a way in front of all the men, if you could, and like we were talking about yesterday, the separate entrances in the business. So at the end of the day, whatever you do is okay. And the other factors you have to keep in mind, if it's in the house, make sure the balcony is appropriate. Then you get into shilos with the berachos, who's going to do it if someone already filled their obligation there, all of those. So you have to factor all of those in with the situation, and you have to keep that in mind. That's very important to keep in mind. Who's going to be saying the berachos? How's it going to be done? So that's something to talk about. And these are basically all issues that could come up. So that's the idea. Any questions, comments on this? Yeah.
So it seems I think this was yesterday. It seems to be understood that this lady is going to be hearing from a man who already heard Megillah in shul.
Correct. Or learned in shul. Correct. We're going to be learning about the berachos and more.
No, bro. I'm just saying in general because I know for a fact supposedly my great grandfather was on that. That's a Megillah that I have.
Yeah.
He's still laying in the house, with the women there. But that was
that was what?
I mean, I'm getting, what? I shouldn't. I don't know if he went to shul or not first, but that's what they said.
Okay. So, okay, yeah. Take a look at the dare shoe we're talking about now, part 2. We're going to be moving on to Arvus. All right. We're going to be moving along to Arvus over here. Arvus means Kol Yisrael Arevim Zebazeh, as we touched upon yesterday. Every single Jew is for another Jew. That means if one person didn't fulfill his obligation, it's considered as if I didn't fulfill my obligation, even though I already fulfilled my obligation. What that means now is I could say a bracha for someone else, even if I don't need that bracha myself. That's what Arvus means. There's a major discussion if women are included in this Arvus. Let's just start slow over here. Start with this footnote in the Dershu. What's the reasoning of those who hold that women are not included in the category of Arvus? So the Dalgamer of Ava, which we learned a few years ago when we learned Hilchos Kiddush and Siman Reish Ayin Aleph, teaches us Shelo kiblu al atzmam arvus bahar grizim bahar evil ka'nashim. Women did not accept upon themselves the halachas, for whatever reason it is, this halachic principle of arvus, of Kol Yisrael V'im Zeh, that if someone didn't fulfill the obligation, it's as if I didn't fulfill my obligation. They didn't accept upon themselves this on the mountain of Grizim and Eva. Question is, why not? It's another good question. Look at the Hagos of the Chassam Sofer on the Shulchan Aruch, what he writes about this. B'chidushe Maharit, in Maseches Kedushin on Daf Ayin Amud Beis, explains Noshim einan arvos la noshim mishum she'ein sipek biyadam limchos. That women aren't included in arvos because they can't rebuke. Worthwhile to see that inside to see exactly what he's referring to.
Yeah.
What about, could they fulfill their obligation from a man who already fulfilled his obligation, a woman or women? The Mishnah Brura, in a few simanim later from the siman that we're currently learning, maybe I'll have to tackle that one next year, Mitzvah Hashem. Mishnah Brura says that they could fulfill their obligation from a man who already fulfilled his obligation. So it says, take a look at the Dalgam Ravava who doubts this. He doubts if men who accepted upon themselves this concept of Arvus and Hargrizim and Arvel, if they can become Arlevim Gamal Noshim, they can fulfill the obligation for women if they already fulfilled their obligation, or no. Just like women didn't accept it upon themselves, so too, Kachloi Kiblu Anoshim, Arvus al Anoshim. It's a two-way street. And therefore, they can't fulfill the obligation of a woman. It says, look at the Shilos and Tshuva Sigurus Moshe. Moshe Feinstein Zatzal, in Orach Chaim, and Chelik Aleph, Siman Kuf Sadi, Dibra Maskova, Nachal Nani, Daiti Bezeh. Shebekriyas HaMegillah Yachol Mi Sheyotza Kvar Lahoitzi Yachedim Afaloi Din Arvus. Moshe says a Kiddush. He says that when it comes to the laning of the Megillah, someone who already fulfilled his obligation could cover the obligation of other people and fulfill their obligation even without coming onto this halachic principle, which is typically needed in this sort of scenario, without coming onto the concept of Arvus. Why? Since the reason for laning the Megillah is in order to publicize the miracle of what happened on Purim, and also someone who already fulfilled the mitzvah of the laning of the Megillah, still has the mitzvah of publicizing the miracle according to his abilities. So then naturally, consequently, it's applicable to say that now this fellow who already fulfills his obligation, he has a connection to the mitzvah. And therefore, he could fulfill the obligation of someone else, even if that other person isn't subject to the rule of Arvus.
Because the dinner pursuing Nisa on both, I guess.
Correct.
The man is
Well,
explaining because he's.
We don't even need to come on to her. For him,
Yeah, but then what's her obligation is to hear the Megillah.
her obligation is to hear the Megillah, but
Just to hear the Megillah.
but who cares about that? There's an obligation to publicize the miracle. Is there a maximum capacity on that? Could you say, oh, you maxed out on that obligation already? No, you keep going.
You keep going.
It's constant. Keep going. The more, the better. So therefore, so to over here, this fella, he could be mafarsin the nays al day laning additional time for the woman. It's more of a publicizing of the miracle again through laning it.
And there's no difference if a person would pay the person or not. The paying would make
What's
a
the
better
difference if there's
connection.
money involved?
I'm just saying, is there a better connection if there's money?
What's the difference? It's
I mean,
permissible either way. Why would there be a difference?
Not
You want to
doing it
publicize the
permissible, I'm just
miracle.
saying there's more
Who
of a
cares if you're getting $1,000 to lane? Who cares if you're getting 100? Who cares if you're getting 2 peanuts? Who cares if you're doing it for free as a total chesed? What's the difference? You're publicizing the miracle, whether you're getting paid or not. It's like teaching. You're teaching someone, who cares you're doing it for free or money. Same Torah, you're teaching the same Torah. You get the same reward. If anything, you get more reward if you don't get paid. Right? All right. Good. Halacha. Fair halacha. But the last month, 2,000 plus views a month. Very good month. Yeah, it's getting up there. But the hours, only 30 hours. Okay. Yeisha Koisvim, so a lot though. Yeisha Koisvim, some say like this. This is going on the Ber Halacha that we learned yesterday. If a woman already fulfilled her obligation, she cannot fulfill the obligation of another woman. The same thing with a katan, with a kid, for a woman or for another katan. Right? There's a doubt if that will work or not. All right? If they're included in Arvus, you could say Alpha Pishiyot, even someone that already fulfilled their obligation could fulfill someone else's obligation. Some write that even if men already fulfilled their obligation, they cannot fulfill the obligation of women or children that are not included in this category of Arvus. Only if the male himself is currently fulfilling his obligation right now could he then fulfill the obligation of other women. So some take that approach. Footnote number 5. The explanation is when they accepted upon themselves the vow on the mountain of Gerizim and Avil, they became responsible for one another. Arevim Zelazel, like the Gemara in Sanhedrin Mem Gimel and Beis says. And included in this is that one person could fulfill the obligation of others, even though that first individual already fulfilled his obligation. So the question is, are women included in this or not? So then he quotes the Dagom Mervava, which we already learned, and he says, and he quotes him word for word, I'm at doubt if a woman is not included in Arvos, meaning she can't help other people, but for men that did accept upon themselves Arvos, so then they could help a woman even though he already fulfilled his obligation, or maybe no. Just like women aren't included in Arvos, so too the men aren't included in Arvos. In other words, is it a one-way street or a two-way street? He doubts about this. Comes the Slach and Meseches berachos on Daf Chav, great Daf over there, Chav Beis, and the Slach says he says in an obvious way that in other words, it's a two-way street. Just like if a woman already fulfilled the obligation, she can't cover the obligation of another woman. So too, if a man already fulfilled his obligation, he can't cover the obligation of another woman. Also, the Yeshua Yaakov says this as well in Orach Chaim and Siman Kuf Pei Vav. He says, look at the Slach, even according to his opinion, if the man is fulfilling the obligation for another man who is part of the group of women, so then he could also cover the woman because he's already covering the man, and the woman just happens to be there, the women. Okay? Good point.
I mean, apparently we don't hold like this because you have all these people who are guys who already laned, they lane for women.
Incorrect. You don't need to come on to Arvus for the laning.
No,
but for the berachos.
Oh, he's saying this is all for the berachos he's talking about?
Are you saying he's talking about for the laning? No, it seems like it's going on the laning.
Right? I mean, he's not
going on. No, you're right. I take that back. You're right. It's going on the laning. So if it's going on the laning, in other words, they could hear the psukim, but it might not count.
Unless you go according to Ramosha's.
Yes, I was going to say if you go with the mahalach of Ramosha, so you already come on to you publicize the nace, so then it's fine. You're publicizing that miracle over there. Correct. Good point. Good point. Yeah, but it seems like the question is, what would Ramosha do with all this? Because they weren't so sure about this. The Pri Megadim wasn't so sure. But Moshe just takes the Pri Megadim and says, "Oh, I'm just going to throw in a monkey wrench over here and say that now you could use this logical svar over here of the yeah, it's a chiddush. They say you could just throw in the svar of publicizing the nace. However, he says Lamais at the end of the day, the Gedolia poskim agree that whether men or women who already fulfilled their obligation, they could cover the obligation of women when it comes to leaning the Megilah. So there it is, anyways. Footnote 7, like the Magen Avraham, the Mishnah Berurah, other Achronim. I wonder if he's going to quote the Moshe down here. that a mitzvah that women are obligated in, they are in Arvus, they're included in Arvus, and you could cover their obligation, even though you fulfill the obligation. And he quotes other Chuvas Farmer says this. You have the Har Svi over here that he quotes, even according to the poskim, will hold that a woman isn't included in Arvus and a man cannot fulfill her obligation. Nevertheless, regarding Megillah, you have to say that part of the Me'ikar Takana, part of the enactment is that one person should cover his friend even without coming onto Arvus. One person could fulfill the obligation of someone else. And then he quotes the Chuvah of Moshe that you have the Persuma Nisa for everyone, even if you don't come on to Arvus, a publicizing the miracle. So he quotes that Rav Moshe. So therefore, consequently, even young children could fulfill their obligation as well, even from someone who already fulfilled his obligation. Right?
Cotton could be mostly another cotton he's talking about? Or?
Megilah, if you look at Tanim, Yecholim Lahoitzi, Echad, Esasheni, Avshemoitzi, actually, right. The Kiddush is not just a man who already fulfills the obligation could cover another young kid, but a young kid who already fulfills the obligation could cover the obligation of another young kid. Then he says, right. So that's why. So that's what he says. Footnote 8. However, lechatchila, preferably, a woman shouldn't read the Megillah. Rather, a man should. Even in a pressing situation when there is no man, when there's no man, right. Even if there's no man, we saw in the Sha'ar Tzion that a woman shouldn't read the Megillah for many women. The Sha'ar Tzion said. However, the Halicha Shloma, that's what Shlomo Zalman Auerbach wonders on the Sha'ar Tzion. He quotes the Korban Asana. He says it's clear from the Shulchan Aruch in another place that women could do zimun for themselves, benching if it's just women. And that's what the custom is when it comes to Kiddush, if it's just women. One person says Kiddush for all the other women. So therefore, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach concludes that it is correct that no, one woman could in fact read the Megillah for many women. Very interesting. And then he ends off and says that by young children that reach the age of education, even though they already fulfilled their obligation, they could cover the obligation and read the Megillah for other children. Certainly, if he didn't fulfill his obligation, he could read from a kosher Megillah and fulfill the obligation of other children. And you should warn them that they should have the intention before they perform the mitzvah to cover and fulfill the obligation of other people as well. Right? Some say that because of the halachas of chinuch, of education for children, preferably the children should hear the Megillah specifically from an adult. That's what some say. A gadol, a full-grown male, is unable to hear, and we're going to discuss this more in the upcoming sifim, Mitzvah Hashem. A male is not able to fulfill his obligation from the Megillah reading of a woman. However, a child, technically speaking, could fulfill his obligation from a woman. However, Deli Rabba writes that a woman should not cover a child, should not read the Megillah for a child. And a child, even who reached the age of education, is not able to fulfill the obligation for an adult, whether a male or female. In a pressing situation, if there's no other way, so then the child could read the Megillah for them without the recitation of the berachos. Why is it that a adult male could not fulfill his obligation from a woman? Many reasons. Number one, it's not kavod tzibur, it's not respect to the congregation, and therefore even an individual, even right, her father, or her husband, or her child, or brother, she should not read the Megillah for because of low plug. They didn't differentiate. When they said something's a problem, it's a problem no matter what. Or because the obligation of Megillah of women is less than the obligation for men. Men, the obligation is kriya, to read the Megillah. Women, the obligation is shmiya, to hear the Megillah. Also, b'di'evid, if post facto a male heard the Megillah reading from a female, he would not fulfill his obligation. There's more of a discussion, even according to Svardim, and he should return and hear the laning again or read it again. Sefer Chazon, without a beracha. Sefer Chazon Avadja says that b'di'evid, post facto, he would in fact fulfill his obligation. Footnote 13, and we'll end with this. The Ber Hativ said that a katan, a child who reached the age of education, could fulfill the obligation of many women. So he says, Sarachin, you need to look into that. the obligation for women is stronger from the obligation of children. Like we just saw, children have two derabbanans. Number one is that the whole obligation is rabbinic to begin with. Number two, it's chinuch for education, and that's what the Pri Megadim says as well. That women could fulfill the obligation of children one-way street, but not the other way around. That children cannot fulfill the obligation of women. So it's implied even in a pressing situation, they did not allow such a thing to happen.
Okay.
Very good. Mirza Hashem, next time we will resume with Sif Bays. Everyone should have a wonderful day.
Which number is this?
Shkach.
Yeah.
Do it.
All right.
Okay.
Now to all right, Shkach.
Yeah.
Have a good day. All right. Have a good day.
Which number is this? This.